think I'm guided, yes. It's a sign. And this book is called Science. And it's by a psychic medium. She's also an English teacher, like me. Yeah? And so that got me thinking about that. But also, the last time I spoke, do you know what the topic I spoke about? Anybody remember? Yes. Yes? Neuroplasticity. Well, it was about the amazing power of the human mind, about the placebo effect, about how people miraculously cure themselves because they believe that this sugar pill is really going to cure them. So through their power of belief, through their feelings, their love, and through their emotions, and through their thoughts, and through their beliefs. So this is science. Science is showing what is possible with the human mind and the human heart, and how we are living in an incredible age where these possibilities can be scientifically explained. But of course, I always like to refer to the principle, because the foundation of everything we understand is the principle. So there are 4 stages. I would say 4 stages, because even though it says there are 3 stages, the 4th stage is when we are in the direct dominion of God. And through the formation, growth, and completion stages, we are in the indirect dominion of God. And our human responsibility is to follow the word of God, to follow the principle, to apply it, to live by it. And by following the principle, we grow spiritually until we reach a point where we are ruled by God's love, by God's presence, that we become one with God. We are God's children, we are temples of God, but because of the fall, this isn't a natural process. This is how it was meant to be. So I came up with an alternative, or I feel a way to understand this. And so I came up with this particular. I talk about the 4 stages of consciousness, because consciousness is awareness. So to understand who we are, to understand who God is, but are we aware? Where's our thinking? Are we limited in our thinking? And so our consciousness is on a certain level, and therefore God's ability to reach us is limited by our perception of reality, of who God is and what it means to what our life is about. So I talked about this victim stage. We're separated from God, so we feel powerless, that we are. We suffer because of separation, but then it's easy to feel, well, I'm controlled by external forces. It's because of my parents, it's because of my ancestors, it's because of my, my job, or just the things that are happening around me. I've inherited this, so it's just I'm a victim. I'm kind of separated. I feel alone. And I have no power to change anything. That's kind of the victim stage. People blame others. It's always easy to blame people rather than take responsibility. So this is the victim stage. The next stage is manifester. To manifest means to create. So actually, I am the creator of my life. So this goes back to the last talk I gave about the amazing power of the human mind. Through our thoughts, through our feelings, emotions, beliefs, we can create our own lives. This is like the law of attraction. You attract what you think. If you complain all day long, you're going to attract problems. But if you're grateful, and if you're positive, and you are loving towards others, you're going to attract good energy. Your vibration is like, I suppose the victim mentality is like, it's a low vibration. Blaming and fear about the future, or can't control your emotions, negative emotions. But the manifestor stage is using the power of the mind and the heart to use positive emotions, positive thoughts, and to believe that you can create your own life. We are co-creators with God. We're not servants. We're children of God, and God wants us to be like him. In fact, God wants us to be better than him. Isn't that amazing? So what's the next stage? Channel. We are meant to be channels for God's Spirit to flow through us and guide us. And so God creates through me. I am a vessel. For God to work through me. So there's a limitation to how much we can do by ourselves, because we're not created as separate individuals just using the power of our mind. We are actually in a relationship with God. We are spiritual beings. We're created by God, and God wants to dwell in us. God created us, so that he can have a partner of love, and to actually be in this physical world, to experience a physical world through us, and to fulfill the ideal of love, because love needs a partner. So we are meant to be in a relationship with God, and so we need to, our consciousness should be to grow to the extent that I am open for God to guide me. And then the next stage is being consciousness, one with God. That's the direct dominion. So God is working through me. I'm still the creator of my own life, but God works through me, but now I'm one with God, so there's no separation. This is the ideal. This is the kingdom of heaven. So I'd like to look at this channel consciousness a bit more. So God creates through me. I am a clear, pure channel for God to express himself. I am open and receptive to God's presence, for God to guide me. I'm listening. I'm wanting God to work through me and to guide me. I listen to my intuition, like the sixth sense. You're kind of listening for guidance. I surrender. So surrender, you may think, well, then you have no free will anymore. But surrender is through your free will, you open yourself up so that I am created by God, and I want to surrender to God's presence, to God's love, so that God's love can flow through me. So there's no restriction. So this is, I consider, channel consciousness, a state of awareness that we are all striving for. So that's why in the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. We live in the last days. This is a time when the barrier between the physical and spiritual world is breaking down, where we're opening up so that God can work more directly through us. So we live in a special time. And in the divine principle it says, as we witness a profusion of spiritual phenomena taking place all around us, we're entering an era when we can reach individual perfection and restore the first blessing of God. The first blessing of God is individual perfection. We are living in this era. This is the time. So we are surrounded by beings of light. Who are they? Have you ever seen a being of light? Well, first of all, I would like to say there is a group of unseen helpers working together to guide us to our highest path. We are not alone. We're not alone. Each one of us is loved by God. Each one of us is special. And we are not alone. The victim mentality is, I am alone, and everyone's forgotten me. So, of course, there are spirits in the spiritual world. What kinds of spirits? We know there are good and bad spirits, but today I'm focusing on the good ones. And there are also angels. Yeah? Spirits, people who lived on this earth, now in the spirit world. Angels have always been in the spirit world. And God created us with the angels. So amongst the spirits, there are these higher spiritual beings who are trying to guide us. There are good ancestors who are trying to guide us. And our loved ones, the ones who recently passed in our lifetime, like our mothers, our grandmothers, those close to us. They care about us, they love us, we love them. So they are with us also. And amongst angels, of course, we know there are good and bad angels, but we are guided by higher angelic beings. That's their purpose, to guide us, help us, support us, protect us. And we have our own guardian angels that from birth are assigned to us. So this is like the group that each one of us is not just guided by one spirit or one angel, but we have a whole host of them trying to help us to grow. So let's look at what does the divine principle say about these higher spiritual beings in these last days. Spirits can neither grow nor be resurrected apart from a physical self. So we understand, everyone who went to the spiritual world, we need a physical body, don't we? Yeah. We know that we need not just life elements from God, love and truth, but we need to do good deeds, good action with our physical body, because that gives us vitality elements to grow. But when you go to the spiritual world, you don't have a physical body, and so whichever level someone has reached, they could go to a high place in the spiritual world, but they cannot grow without a physical body. The spirits of people who died before they could reach perfection during their earthly life can be resurrected only by returning to earth and completing their unaccomplished responsibility through cooperation with earthly people. So we know that this is what happens to people in the spiritual world. They have to come back. That's why they help us. By assisting people of faith living on the earth to fulfill their missions, the spirits may complete their missions at the same time. So they get the benefit. They help us and we help them. And this is called returning resurrection. This is what divine principle says. So how do spirits help us? Again, what does it say in the principle? When people become receptive to spirits through prayer or other spiritual activities, the spirits descend to them to form a common base with their spirit selves and work with them to make a common base. They guide people on the earth to accomplish the will of God. So one thing they do is they pour this is the principle, they pour spiritual fire on earthly people and give them the power to heal diseases. They help people enter states of trance and perceive the realities of the spiritual world. They give people revelations and the gift of prophecy. They also give deep inspiration to the soul. So this is what it says in the divine principle, how these higher spiritual beings who need to grow, they need to return, and they work with people on earth to help us. And of course some people have special gifts to heal diseases, or they see the spiritual world and they have revelations, or they can foretell the future. But for most of us, maybe we can receive deep inspiration to guide us. So this book here, I think it's such a good book. Philip Burley, I have said before, he is a blessed member. He's not directly connected to our movement because he's a spiritual medium and that's what he's focusing on. But this book is very principled. There are 20 people from the spiritual world who are well known on earth. And they are communicating, and I find it fascinating and really insightful. It really adds, I think, to the understanding of the spiritual world and what the spiritual world wants to tell us. So I'm going to read 3 communications from spirit world from this book. Jesus, Saint Germain, and Albert Einstein. So first of all, Jesus, he says this: the spirit world and the physical world are to act as one, each supporting and benefiting the other for common purposes designed and supported by the Creator. Communication with those in spirit is an imperative because their advanced awareness makes it possible for them to guide us to know and do the right thing. It's an imperative. They really want to communicate with us, to help us, because they know things we don't know. So that's why we need to be open. Read these books, or the messages. Of course, we can say, where are the messages coming from? Can we trust them? And of course, you may say, well, yeah, maybe you're reading something and it's not really true. Maybe it's false. Maybe it's not from the higher spiritual realms. But the spirit world is still communicating. It will not stop, because we need to know things. We need to understand more. It is the mission of higher spiritual beings to guide human beings during our time on earth. And the mission of human beings is to discern this guidance and act on it. It's two ways. Their mission is to help us, to guide us. Our mission is to discern or understand, what this is and act upon it. It's a two-way street. Saint Germain. All people have guides and teachers assigned to you from the spirit world. The degree to which they can help you depends on your degree of receptivity. And I think this word receptivity is the key. Maybe we get lots of guidance, we don't notice it. But they keep trying. But if we're receptive, we'll get the guidance. Your physical bodies vibrate at a lower frequency than ours. For us to interface with the physical world, we must lower our frequency. Through meditation, you can raise your vibration and meet us halfway.
Sorry, who is this?
He lived, he lived a long time ago. He's a European. He lived in, I think, the 16th century. He was an alchemist, and he was a medium, and he was a very talented person. He knew royalty. So there's so much you have to search, find out about him. But Saint Germain is the person that's been working with Philip Burley for many years. He's the main person that works with him. Yes. The heart is very important in our interfacing with you. When it is open, childlike and receptive, we can easily enter in. And Saint Germain, he says that today we live in an age of much left brain activity, analytical, and this is blocking us. We need to open up the more intuitive side of us. So, the rational mind does not open us up to the spirit world. We need our rational mind, yeah? But when it comes to being receptive to the spirit world, we need to have an innocence and a childlike quality, like Jesus said, unless you become like a child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. If you want to know what kind of beings are with you, ask yourself, who am I? What is my essential nature? What do I think about and love the most? How do I spend most of my life? Then you will know. So I'm a teacher, so I must have some teachers with me. I'm an actor, I must have some actors. There must be these people. Of course, I've probably got some religious people because I come from a Christian background and I'm receptive. So the things we love, you're not going to have the person who's a farmer in this life, goes to the spirit world, and they go and look for a doctor on earth. Doctors will look for doctors, scientists will look for scientists to guide them. Have you got some scientists here? Yeah. Anyway, we're guided by those who have some connection with us. It's to do with our spiritual level, the things which they did not accomplish or fulfill, and that we have a similar mission, and also our interests, the things we love. Yeah? Albert Einstein, how do you raise your energy to a higher frequency? Raise your love. Dwell in love. As the essence of all energy, love flows throughout the entire creation. It is the glue that holds everything together. Then it says the greatest struggle comes in trying to bring inventions to earth. So he talks about that everything is created first in the spiritual world. Yeah? He says, it says here, he talks about television. Many scientists gathered in the spirit world to work on the idea of television before it came to the earth plane, but it already existed in the mind of God. Television existed side by side with the dinosaur, if you understand what I'm saying. He's joking a bit. It was just a matter of time to create the earthly environment to bring forth everything. Dinosaurs first and televisions later. He laughs. Some of the work happened in Russia and other places, but in the Western world, Philo T. Farnsworth was the primary target of efforts by the spirit world to pass ideas to Earth about television. Creating a device that could pick up energy waves and translate them into pictures on a tube was extremely complicated and took a lot of thought. But Philo T. Farnsworth was impressed by the spirit world in such a way that he could pick up the ideas. He had a brilliance or genius about him when it came to the earth plane. You might say Mr. Farnsworth was born to invent the television. And he talks about people like, Shakespeare. That he was guided because because of the kind of person he was. And also he says that writers of books, they don't realise they get inspiration from spirit world, from people in spirit world. Yeah? So all this creativity that's going on is happening in the spiritual world. He even says there's an Intel factory up in the spirit world. Intel factory, making computers, computer parts. And he talks about how people who, from lower realms, they didn't believe in God, right? And they were making cars, and they continue making cars in the spirit world. But the trouble is that when they drive their car, it goes so far and it turns around and comes back because their consciousness cannot go beyond a certain point. And he talked about aeroplanes as well. They fly an aeroplane and it goes so far and it has to come back because it's their consciousness, their awareness. And that's why while we're on this earth, we need to raise our vibration, our awareness. Because when we go to the spiritual world, to be in a place of the same vibration, well, that's where we will be. So the more we can love and the more we can live a true life, the better. Angels. So the first picture, angels appearing to shepherds to give the good news of the birth of the Messiah. So they give their messengers. And then here we have the angel Gabriel also speaking to Mary that say she will give birth to a son, a special son. So they are messengers. And then here, these are guardian angels, quite artistic, the baby is being protected, and these children who are near water, they're being protected also. So they protect us, they guide us, and they give messages. So in this book, one of the chapters is from the Archangel Michael, and he talks about angels and their role and their mission. He says this: each of you has 2 angels assigned to you when you are born. They are with you at all times, guiding and protecting you. They are hidden, unobtrusive and quiet, because that is the nature of angels. They represent the quiet voice, the quiet force of God. It could lead to confusion if we were apparent to you. Our purpose is to guide and help without credit, and without you even knowing we are there. A human being has the power to call on us and use us as a force of goodness. No one can get past me. I am all light. Darkness cannot penetrate where there is light. Low entities are afraid of this light and are pushed away by it. They become very uncomfortable. So that's why if we're spiritually high, we are reading God's word, we are doing spiritual practices like prayer, meditation, and we are doing good deeds and trying to follow a principled way of life, then actually the light, we emit a light. So lower entities, lower spirit world can't affect us. So if you're wondering, we can get affected by things, even if things go wrong in our life. If you feel I'm being attacked, there's something going on. But if we keep a grateful heart, rather than just trying to blame someone, or feeling a victim. Because we understand, because of the fall, we understand that the mistakes of our ancestors, that we have to somehow pay back the mistakes. And sometimes lower spirits, because it says in the principle that the last days when the spirit and physical will come together, actually it's the lower spirits that come first. They come first. So if you feel bad things happening, you're feeling attacked, or in your family things are not working as you hope, it's because the evil spirit world is trying to disrupt us. Yes? But if we keep a humble heart, a grateful heart, then it's like we can overcome that. Sometimes we just have to persevere. Yeah? So we keep our vibration high. If things are going wrong, don't accuse, don't blame, don't get depressed. Keep our spirits high. So this man is called Keith Leon S. I don't know what the S stands for. But he wrote a book called Walking with My Angels. It's a true story of his life. He said Keith Leon S. could hear his guardian angel's voice from the time he was 5 years old. So he actually heard a voice guiding him and protecting him. And his life was saved, I think it was 7 or 8 times in his life. And he tells the story of how this happened. And 30 years ago he was told that he would write a book that would change lives. And this is the book. This is the true story of a man whose life was spared over and over again with the help of his angels. And I would like to read one occasion where his life was saved. So when he was a teenager, well, he was at high school, he's an American, his friend, Timar, he bought a 1969 Ford Mustang for his first car. I don't know what they look like. Hans probably knows all about those cars. You know, a Mustang, Americans, they know, okay. Is it a good car?
Yes.
Yeah, right, okay. And so they lived quite close to a very long straight road. And they were kind of having some fun with this car. And then one night, hardly anybody was on the road, this long, long road. So Timar, his friend, decided to open it up and see just how fast it could go. The car reached 90 miles an hour, but he decided to go past the stop sign because he thought it's so late at night, no one's there. Yeah. So they continued, but at 100 miles an hour, they saw the red light and cars ahead in front of the red light. And so Timar put his foot on the brake, but he wouldn't slow down. And he kept trying to put it on until finally the brakes locked and they skidded towards an intersection where a line of cars was waiting for the light to turn green. He came up to the cars in front of us, swung the car to the left, and then pulled the steering wheel back to the right. We slammed into a cement island, and the car hit the power box that ran the light at that intersection. I saw glass break. I heard metal crunch as my neck snapped right and left. Things then went dark for a second, and then my life flashed before my eyes. I didn't see every moment in the flash, but I saw all the main events that had had a major impact on my life up until that point. My birth, me as a toddler, birthday parties, my mother crying and me supporting her with love, cliff accident, something that happened at a scout camp, my trip to the hospital with an ear infection, and other major events. All of a sudden, I saw another white flash, and then images started to go in reverse, taking me back to the beginning. When I got past childbirth, I saw another white flash, and I snapped back in the present moment. We found ourselves sitting in the car on the side of the road, just to the right of the intersection. It sounded like, as I sat there, my surroundings gradually came into focus. I could see the interior of the car and I could hear the engine running. The car was idle. It was purring like a kitten. I couldn't see any damage to the windshield. In my field of view, I couldn't see any damage at all. "Are you okay?" I asked Timar. He was. I asked him, "Did you hear glass breaking?" He said he did. Did your life flash before your eyes?" I asked. "Yes." We decided to get out, look at the car and see how bad the damage was. When I came around the car, looking at the side of the car, Timar was shaking his head in disbelief. There was not a scratch or a dent on that car. And then they looked at the spot where the car had hit this cement island. There was a jagged slice running up the side of the curb, leading right up to the power box. His tyre rim had carved out physical proof that we had not only hit the island, but hit the box as well. We looked at each other, saying nothing, got back into the car, and we just sat there in silence for what seemed like a lifetime. So this was an example where he had an accident, he heard the glass, he heard the metal, his neck was probably broken, and then he had this life review, and then it went backwards. And then the car was standing there to the side, and he was fine. So how can that happen? Well, this was his story. How angels intervene, and I have quite a few angel books, and there are a lot of stories of angels saving people's lives. So now, this is angels. But what about signs from loved ones? This lady, Laura Lynn Jackson, she's written a book called Signs, as I said, and she is a high school English teacher, a bit like me, and a psychic medium. She possesses the ability to communicate with loved ones who have passed and convey messages of love and healing. So, these are some of the signs, some of the stories she tells about when somebody died, like a close relative, and then there's a story of a hummingbird appears, of a deer, of coins, of butterflies, of music, familiar music of the person who died, rainbows, feathers, ladybirds, and electronic equipment. So these signs, because the people during their life, those were things which they were very typical of their life. And so there are lots of stories where these things keep appearing because they're messages from the person who died. Because the person who's alive, they're grieving, but they feel their presence. And they go to this psychic medium, and she tells them, this is what your grandmother or your mother is trying to say. She is still with you. Don't worry about her. She's fine. So I'd like to tell one story about dragonflies and deer. So this is a story of Carla and Chris, an American couple, and their two young sons, Calder and Caleb. Calder, when he was 7 years old, he was electrocuted by a faulty light in a swimming pool, and he died. And in those days that passed, it was a shock to any mother, but the mother, Carla, couldn't shake off the feeling that he was still present somehow. I had this feeling, she said, that he was sending me messages. And it didn't make sense, so I felt like I must be going crazy, she thought. Then one afternoon, she was driving her car when a tiny baby dragonfly flew around her head and landed next to the driver's seat window. She had no idea how or when it got into the car. She kept driving, and the dragonfly didn't move. She stopped at a red light, rolled down the window, but the dragonfly didn't budge. When I finally got to my destination, I got out of the car, and the baby dragonfly got out with me, flew around me for a while, and then just flew away. At that moment, Carla thought, I wonder, was that Calder? And the pain, which she said was still very raw, and I realized I'd been crying the whole drive. And then I stood up and tried to figure out what had just happened. I felt like he was sending me a message, but I just couldn't quite grasp it. And so for the rest of the summer, she saw dragonflies everywhere. On the doorknob, on a wall, in the bathroom. I was in a swimming pool and my sister-in-law said, "Do you know, a dragonfly has been sitting on your head for a while?" And then she says, all these kids were around me and splashing water and making all this noise, but the dragonfly just sat there on my head. It didn't want to leave. So, because these things were happening, she then, through a friend, she heard about Laura Lynn Jackson and wanted to have a reading because she wanted to know, is my son trying to communicate with me? And he came through, and what he said to her is that, you're going to go on a family trip soon, aren't you? And yes, well, then Calder, the boy, showed me the exact way. So now who's speaking is the medium. This boy showed me the exact way he intended to send a message to his mother during the trip, so she would know he was with them the whole time. And it was very unusual for someone to give such a specific sign. But this is the sign. Calder is going to send you a deer. I see it very clearly, and he wants you to know that you will have a direct encounter with the deer. He is saying this so that you know he's with you the whole time. He wants to send you a direct message, so the encounter between you and the deer will be a direct one. So, a little while later, they went on their trip. And so they stopped the car. No, while they were driving, she fell asleep. But her husband saw these deer, and these rare deer, passing by, and said, "Look, wake up, look, the deer." But by the time she woke up, the deer had gone, and she was so disappointed because this was the sign. But it was not the end of the story, because a little while later, her husband stopped the car because he needed the toilet. He went to this bar, and she stayed in the car. And she was just staring out the window, lost in thought. And then she was thinking about Calder. And a light rain was falling, and the parking lot was empty except for a few cars. And then a movement caught her eye, and she turned towards the edge of the parking lot. There, emerging from a small row, emerging from a small row of bushes was a deer. Carla gasped. She slowly and carefully got out of the car, careful not to frighten the deer away. But he didn't seem scared. He looked straight at Carla and then, incredibly, began slowly walking towards her. That was the moment that her husband came out of the bar. "Don't move," she told him. "Just take a picture." The deer came within 10 feet of her, close enough to Carla to look into his clear, beautiful eyes. Then he crept 2 feet closer, and then closer still. Carla held her breath and didn't move. The deer came even closer. Finally, only 2 feet separated Carla and the deer. Slowly, she extended her hand, palm up. The deer stepped forward and gently put his nose in her hand. He stayed there for several moments, allowing Carla to cradle his face. Then the deer tilted his head and looked up at Carla. Their eyes locked. After what seemed like the longest time, the deer turned around and walked away. And she, her husband, and their son, their other son, remained motionless, watching him head back towards the bushes. When he turned around, gave them one last look, and then disappeared into the foliage out of sight. So that's an incredible story. I mean, you could say that's a highly unusual story, but she's been doing this for a long time. And this lady, Laura Lynn Jackson, I mean, she's been tested concerning her psychic ability. And you've done some rigorous testing, and she's one of the kind of top people in America who's kind of shown that she is not just making it up. Okay, so have you had any encounters from spirit world, loved ones, or dreams or messages, signs, or angel intervening in your life? Put your hand up if you have had some experience, some sign. Yes. I'd like to tell you about some of my signs. You know, I am not a psychic medium. I don't see things, but I would like to read, because yes, here are some of my examples in my life I can remember. So, as I said before, I'm a teacher and I like books. So I'm always finding books. So that's one way I feel I'm guided. So this talk I gave now started because I found a book. Yeah. And I had lots of really good books that really inspire me, and I feel at this stage in my life they're just the right books for me. If I think about coming to Sweden, why did I come to Sweden? I was in the telephone box on a 40-day workshop in, not Camberg, in Smitten, yeah? And I was phoning up Eva, and she was in Sweden. And I just had this very strong feeling I should come here. Just a feeling. Okay, was that a good feeling?
Your life is so strong now.
Yeah. And then, of course, coming here, I was doing this Sunday school for many years. And so why did I do that? Because it was a feeling. I just felt it's important. And it's like when I was doing this, I was receiving inspirations all the time. Like just thoughts come. And I think the way I receive guidance is just sudden thoughts come into my head. It's happening all the time when I'm teaching. Yeah. So that's how I experience spirit world guiding me. I had a dream of Joseph during the summer. Yeah. Joseph is in Crete working with ComHem, customer service. I don't have a good relationship with him. Yeah. It's always been difficult between me and him. But in this dream, I was walking, like hiking with him. And then we came to this rock face, very steep. And he wanted to go up there. And but I thought it was too difficult. I would go around. So he climbed up there. But when I tried to go the long way around, I thought, oh, it's take too long. No, I'm going to try going up this steep cliff face, yeah? And there was like a rope hanging there, and then this step ladders made out of rope. And so I got on there, and it was very hard, but I finally got to the top. And when I got to the top, there was Joseph, and we had a good conversation. And it was like I hadn't had such a good conversation with him, and I was sharing him with him. Somehow we connected. Then I woke up. And when I woke up, this dream was such a strong dream. What I did, I opened my laptop and I wrote a letter. I told him I had this dream. And because our relationship's been difficult, and I told him that, my oldest brother and my father didn't have a good relationship. And for years, from when he was very young, I felt there's something going on between me and him that is somehow unresolved from my father and my brother's time. So I wrote to him about this point. I didn't get a reply, but at least I got guidance. And sometimes, I don't know if you have a dream that's very real sometimes. It stays with you. I had this before I met the church. I had a dream. I was standing outside my home with my father and brother, and it was night time, and there were these bright stars, and they were getting bigger and bigger, and they started to explode and fall down the ground and, exploding. And this was like the last days, when the sun and the moon and the stars falling down. And so for me that was a sign we are living in the last days. So it was kind of guiding me to kind of search. And also I had a dream a few years ago now of my parents, because my parents died over 10 years ago, 2002 and 2006, yeah? And then I had this dream and I met them and I said to them, "You're alive!" I was really surprised. I was like, "Wow, you're alive!" So I think I've met them in spirit world. One thing that Saint Germain says is that sometimes we do go to the spiritual world to get some guidance, but when we come back we forget. And actually my father had a dream maybe a year or so before he died, And in this dream, he was in this very big room with lots of people wearing white. And on the stage was this lady wearing white. And he told me the dream. He said, I felt really good there. And he'd said to this lady, who I think was Damon him, you know, I'm not going to forget you. I'm not going to forget you. So this was a sign for him. And also for me, to kind of confirmation about, well, yes, that's telling me where you're going. You're going to be in a workshop in the future. Okay, so I talked before about these stages of growth, you know, this victim consciousness where outside circumstances control us, to the next stage where we have the power to create our own lives through the power of our mind and heart, yeah, because we're co-creators. But this next stage of like channel consciousness is to open ourselves up and allow the Spirit of God to work in us. So we need to be receptive. So I thought I would end by saying, well, we need to be open for guidance. We need to be receptive. Be humble. Be childlike. Be innocent. And be loving. And I think if we have that heart, then we're open for Spirit World to guide us so that they can help us to grow. Because we can't do it by ourselves completely. We really need Spirit World that's surrounding us and helping us and cheering us on to help us to grow and become the people that God wants us to be. So with that, I'd like to finish. Thank you very much.